When I originally filmed this video, I was planning on doing this series on my YouTube channel. I have since decided that I will exclusively be sharing these stories on my blog. If you wish to hear these stories, I will link my blog in the description below. So today I wanted to introduce a little bit of a video series that I'm going to be doing. It's about revisiting the past, and I mostly wanted to talk about why I'm revisiting the past. I found myself about 2 years ago just really unhappy in motherhood. I really just wanted to try something different. I thought that maybe I wasn't cut out to be a stay-at-home mom. Maybe that just doesn't work for me. And so I went back to work. And then there I was, a year into my job, realizing that working wasn't working for me either. And so I was really trying to figure out, because I felt so called at the time to step back into motherhood and start focusing on being a stay-at-home mom. And I remember when I made that decision, I just was really confused. I was really confused as to why it didn't work out the first time, why I felt like maybe I wasn't cut out for it, and why I was now feeling so pushed to go back to that. And so I wanted to share a little bit about that story today. Really, I guess where I had the epiphany that I needed to stop working and start being home with my son again was on a family vacation. And I've talked a lot about this in my previous posts, but if you're new here, which most of you probably are, this channel is not very big yet. Hopefully one day we'll see. But if sharing my story can help just one person, then it's definitely worth it. So I think it's worth putting out there. But I found that I needed to come back and be a stay-at-home mom while I was on a family vacation, and I had just been feeling burnt out at work. I had been feeling a lot of anxiety about going into work, and it was just interfering with every part of my daily life. And so on this trip, I remember just having this conversation with my brother, and I was kind of telling him like what I was experiencing at work, and he told me that I was just burnt out. And I was relieved because I was like, okay, this vacation's gonna fix everything. This is a very relaxing vacation. And that's even what he told me. He was like, you just need a vacation. So I was on this vacation. It was very relaxing. And then I remember the second that I got back into the office, my coworkers were like, are you ready to be back? And I said yes. I was like, yeah, I'm so excited to be here. And I tried to be, but then I found myself sitting at my desk with my work in front of me, just staring at it. Like, I didn't know where to go from there. I didn't know where to start. I just felt so discouraged. And I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And all of the symptoms that I had been experiencing of burnout, they just hadn't gone away. And that was the day that I came back. And so I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. And that was hard because I had been chasing a job in the funeral industry for a long time. And after some personal reflection and pondering, I realized that I had been marrying two sides of the funeral service so close together, and that is the job of planning funerals and the job of caring for the dead. And I'd always like married them so tightly, and when I allowed myself to let them separate, I realized I don't like planning funerals. I never have. I always wanted to, and I was good at it, but I have such a hard time planning funerals. It's just not for me. But embalming and picking up people who have passed away after they've passed away is such a sacred part of the job to me. And it's what calls to me, and it's what I love. And so I sat with that for a little bit, and I realized that while I'm in this early stage of being a mom, having kids, while my son's young, doing that part of the job just doesn't make sense. And I know that there's funeral directors out there who they embalm their whole pregnancies and while breastfeeding, and they're just careful and wear a lot of PPE, and I understand why, because it is such a calling. It is something you're so drawn to. But at the same time, I just feel like I can't convince myself that it's worth it. As badly as I want to be embalming and caring for the dead, I also don't feel like I want to be risking my children's health while I'm pregnant, breastfeeding. I don't want to be gone on Christmas and Thanksgiving and nights. And it's just such a hard job to do when you have little kids. And so, after making that realization and kind of thinking it through, I decided that I just need to put a pause on my career right now, because it doesn't make sense for me to keep trying to do something that's just not going to fit my lifestyle right now as a mom, especially a little bit of a crunchy mom. It doesn't make sense for me to be exposing my body and my children to all of the chemicals involved with the embalming room and caring for the dead. So I decided that I had been holding on to this career so hard because I had married the two so closely. And then when I realized that they can be separate, and the part that I love is the part that's just not going to work, and this part that I keep trying to make work is just not going to work. So I really just had to let it go. And it was a relief. And there's also a lot of grief there, as you can probably tell, because I'm like crying through this whole video. But I definitely think I've made the right choice as I've like stepped away from my career, and as I've started really focusing on being a mom and spending quality time with my son and not trying to distract myself from the life that I can't have right now. I've been a lot happier, and I found a lot of peace in just living in the present and accepting where I am in life. So, as I really come to the realization that I need to not be building my career right now, and that I just need to be home with my son and raising him and growing another baby and just getting ready to really be in that motherhood space, I thought back a lot on the first time that I stayed home with my son, and I've tried to make sense of why it was so difficult for me then, so that hopefully as I step back into this motherhood role, it's not as difficult. I came to realize that a lot of the reasons it was such a difficult time for me were situational. There were a lot of things that happened and a lot of things for me to unpack during that time that I wasn't able to do while being a 24/7 caretaker of my son. So, throughout the next few months on Fridays, I'm going to be releasing some episodes of this series talking about the things that really made it hard when I was a new mom. And so I would love to have you guys along for that journey. I'm also going to be sharing resources and tools that I used during those times that made it easier for me. and things now as I've gone back and started processing things now, the resources and tools that I've used to help get me through those things. And so the main things that I'm going to be talking about in the rest of this series, and these are all things that happened around the time that my son was born, including the birth of my son. So I'm going to be talking about my faith transition out of a very high demand religion. I'll be talking about my birth story with my home birth, my 38-hour long home birth. I'm also going to be talking about losing 2 good friends shortly after my son was born and how that affected me as an early mom. And then losing my dream job before I was really ready to let it go, recognizing my postpartum depression, how a third loss brought me back into the funeral industry, and then why that new job wasn't what I had hoped it would be. And so I hope that you guys will stick along with me throughout this journey. I hope that sharing my story can help at least one person out there. And then if you're going through your own journey of transition or just trying to realize where you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to be doing right now, I put together just a little guide for rewriting your future, and you can get that in the description. It's a free guide that I put together that is just some of the practices that I went through as I came to transition from being a working mom to wanting to be a stay-at-home mom and all of that. And then if you guys want to hear more of the videos about this transition, I will also be linking that on the screen here. So thank you.